All right, Ryan, thanks for coming. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's always fun to be with Christopher Donaleski.
To say too, right? um, um, I was actually looking forward to this call, this conversation. I think it's interesting because one of the topics I've actually talked with a lot of people over the last couple of months in just the Smidgen of Proof podcast in general. I think maybe some people know about it, some people don't know about it. The Smidgen of Proof idea came around where we had 35,000 decisions that people make every day. And majority of those decisions, we don't have everything we need to make that decision, but we make it anyway. And that happens a lot in what we do, especially in our digital transformation and process improvement type of roles. I think that's a synergy have within the space. The not so synergies are the science part of it, because this is one thing I don't know a lot about, which I'm excited to learn a little more about the space. And I think that's really interesting because you can find some very great partnerships, again, synergies that exist in very unlikely places. And so when we take some areas that how do you actually fuse certain things together, and really at the end of the day we're all get better, figure out how we can actually navigate this disruption. And so I'm really excited to talk about these kind of things with you today. So to get started, subsea. Explain to me a little bit about that, what that is, to audience that people that might be chiming in that really don't have a clue about that. Energy is one thing. Geoscience is a different piece of that. The audience exactly what it is, what you do, and maybe just a little bit of something that you would want them to know going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really exciting to learn about the Earth and what's below your feet. So geoscience really covers the science about the Earth and the subsurface. And this is critical for us to understand how we can leverage the Earth's resources, both in an environmental friendly way, but also in a way to provide countries, individuals, and communities with energy. So it's really quite a great opportunity for geoscientists to become involved in the energy industry.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, there's a whole thing around grounding, right? That I've been looking into recently, where like they say if you travel, you're supposed to take your shoes off and take your socks off. You're supposed to get grounded, and there's a lot of like great benefits from that, supposedly, right? I remember as a kid growing up, and it was always we practically never wore shoes. We were always outside, and we had a rock driveway. No pun intended to rock energy. We had a rock driveway, and we could run up and down with bare feet, right? And just the greatest thing ever. I'd probably like have blisters and cuts and stuff if I try to do that now. But I think it's great to, like you said, know what's below your feet. I love that. I love that. So tell me a little bit about like maybe one of the most interesting things that you've worked on in this space. I'd love to just kind of really dive into a little bit of how do people get excited about this? What's something that you could like get tell a story or something that's like amazing, because it's not just a bunch of rocks.
It's not just a bunch of rocks. Just
Yeah.
to going back to something you mentioned about growing up and having rocks underneath you. I think all of us growing up as kids, we explore. It's in our nature to
Mhm.
explore. And I grew up on a farm in Idaho, and I was privy to the dirt and always wondered what was below my feet. And I wasn't afraid to get dirty. And there's a lot, Mike Rowe and others that, hey,
Yeah.
dirty jobs are out there. And
Yes.
geoscience, you get down into the dirt and you really start to understand and you explore what's really under there. And one of the most fascinating things is how the Earth, basically records a history. There's like a big journal. You look under the ground, and all of the depositional layers of sediments tell a story. And I think one of the most incredible stories is how we came up with understanding more about the subsurface, because we can't actually walk down there, right? We have to actually consider what kind of sensors or monitoring, or how do you actually learn about what's underground? or under your feet. And so this really introduces concepts like seismic and regional studies where you're looking at different plate tectonics. And so all of that's fascinating. I think one of the greatest stories that I was involved in was searching for in the Gulf of Mexico prospects that we wanted to mature and looking at how the plates had moved. These are like the countries themselves, like the entire plates moved and
Yeah.
shifted through time in order to create the environments required for energy.
So amazing. Love how you're talking about this shifting of tectonic plates and the shifting of continents. It's very similar to the shift that we see in businesses that they're making right now with the energy transition, and some of the shifts that are happening within that space. At the connect between technology and geoscientist or field. How do you help close that gap, ensuring that technology solutions deliver real value and workflows in that decision making process?
Well, I will tell you that the energy industry is a long standing industry, and they've done things a certain way for a very long time. A lot of their processes and procedures are literally like almost a century old. Like they're really old. And I think digital and transformation really can make an incredible difference as we digitize a lot of the analog things or the paper things, and make them more available. And kind of back to your original point, we need to be able to make business decisions faster, and they need to be data driven. We need to understand the data, use technology, and make better business decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Recently you and I had attended the oil and gas digital transformation conference in Houston. It was great. We both presented, and one of the things I got from you more than anything was your talk around the real time data quality evaluation. Um, and what are the biggest obstacles in workflow, and how can they ever overcome them and leverage the full potential of their data in real time? Because that seems to be the thing these days, right? Is that you have data, great, but data is only valuable when it's relevant. So real time data becomes super relevant. So how do we make sure that we're getting there, and how are we able to make sure that we can trust that data in real time, in a way that allows us to extrapolate value?
Yeah, so just to kind of cue you up on that, traditionally real-time data has been in the production sense of the world, but now we're getting to a point when you can have monitoring on the seafloor for seismic data. And so you get these huge volumes of data normally once a year, maybe once every 2 years. And now we're getting to the point where you can get all of those petabytes of data in weekly. And so it's really critical that you not only be able to process all of that data very fast to be able to get to the business decisions, but also, the monitoring isn't perfect. The sensors aren't perfect. There's a lot of interpretation that's involved. And it's really about how do you distill from the signal from the noise? How do you distill the
Mm-hmm.
insights out of the big, significant data sets, the true kernels that will help you make the best decisions for your business and for your company?
Yeah. So when we there's still human in the middle, right? There's still this idea of interpretation. I think we'd also probably, I think it's, I think we could agree that we could take 5, maybe 10 different scientists or data analytical roles and say, look at this, and we might get some variations in interpretation. Would that be a maybe fair statement?
Very fair, especially in the geoscience world. We call it the art of geoscience
Yeah.
because,
Yes.
you know, the kind of experience that people are have gone through, that's how they decide and make decisions. And so everyone has a different set of experiences, which is why collaboration is key. And I can't tell you, one of my favorite topics for that workshop that we both attended was industry collaboration. We have an opportunity today to collaborate like we've never before collaborated across operators, independent, service companies, data providers, and even cloud providers in ways that we haven't ever been able to do before.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that it's interesting because that problem I feel like is always the issue, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. And I don't mean to like sound um, negative or pessimistic about this, but I think the collaboration actually gets harder because, and let me explain. So I have a couple different tools I use, many different, and they all now everybody's AI is included. The thing these days. Everybody has their version of AI, and it's becoming super popular. Obviously, it's here to stay, and I do think that there is some really really good value that AI brings. People haven't figured out how to actually use it properly yet. And I think there's still a lot of discovery around this topic. We can get into generals versus SMEs and kind of the idea of like how they work, but in a nutshell, to what you were saying earlier about the collaboration, that when the problem that I have right now using even AI is that I go to one source and I'm using it to either summarize meetings or to help me out with interpretation of different data sets. I'm like, well, wait, I have another model that I'm using for an AI model over in this application, but I can't ask this model to go look at that model and to talk to each other and figure out what's in some way of then collaborating manually, share resources, to share different data sets. And I think that when you look at more of an enterprise level solution, maybe that makes more sense. You'll have all that data collected in the ecosystem. But I still think that collaboration between companies, vendors, and clients, like all these things, that still becomes a very it's integration, collaboration are the two big key areas. And I still see that there's going to be some struggle with that. So I guess the follow up question I would have for you on that is, knowing that we have these barriers of collaboration just with people, and then we're seeing that also translate into AI modeling. What do we do? How do we kind of overcome that? What are maybe the first steps in your mind to say this is at least, this may not solve this problem, but we're going to at least make this first step, and it's going to help us get there.
Yeah, my first step is basically trust, right? We have to start with some significant trust adjustments with AI and machine learning. And I think for the most part, some of the technology might feel ready, but the data is not. A lot of the data can be misleading. And so if all you give the machine is bad data, you're probably going to get bad answers. So where I like to start is on the foundation of trust. And so if you have a trusted data foundation, and this is a place where you can capture insights from people about the data, about the quality of the data, and being able to share those insights across not only your organization or enterprise, but also with joint ventures and others in a standard way, so that applications and tools can also benefit from those insights that can be shared as well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. The foundation is trust. I think at the end of the day, trust has many levels, and you can trust the data. Other people may or may not trust the data, but then how do you? The collaboration requires equal trust, equal footing around trusted foundational elements, right? And so I think that's always the key, is like sharing what you know. And I think in this day and age, I think it's really interesting because we don't have. It's not really about how what you know anymore. I think what you know is getting easier and easier to search. It's how you know it is
Mhm.
piece there. And I think that when you look at even the just the disagreements or the different interpretations that happen in any field, it always goes back to there's a level of what we know, and sure you could argue that well some person or some people know more than other people. Sure, but if you're all equal footed on what you know, then it really does depend on how you know it. And I think that's what we can share, and that's what becomes really really useful in this. So if we kind of like transition into more of the generalist versus the idea of taking an SME and replacing a human SME with a digital SME, a avatar, a AI model that is able to interpret and be able to those types of jobs. I know you see, and I'm not a doom and gloom kind of guy. I think that there's a space for both to exist. I think that there's going to be a lot of in the future. I think that we are going to be able to utilize AI and technology to enhance. To me, AI is accelerator. I've said this several times. I think this is true. That prove me wrong, but AI is only an accelerator. To your earlier point, bad input, bad output. It's a garbage in, garbage out, and I think that's always true, regardless of technology or people. We have to ask the right questions. So one, what's your take on that? Do you think that a digital SME, an AI model could replicate and down the road in the future replace your space? And if not, how do you see that?
Yeah, most of my career, I've tried to do the best I could to replace myself. Meaning, if I could get the machines to actually do my job, that's going to make my life easier, and it's going to make everyone else's life easier too. And there's a set of expectations that I think most people have that the machines should do more for us. They're brilliant machines. They've gotten faster and faster. Moore's law is continuing the exponential, with performance and storage, you know, it should be doing more for me. I should be able to get more out of the machine. So when I come back to, well, is it going to take my job? Well, there's a lot of things that people do today that they really don't want to do. And can the
It's
machines
true.
do that? Yeah, they can. They can do it pretty well. And can they do everything really well? No. I think some of the key places that they can't replace is, they have no emotion. They don't understand relationships. They don't understand collaboration, and they can't take advantage of the insights across, multiple models today yet. So I think there's still plenty of space for humans. But humans need to be better at letting the machine do a lot of the work that they don't need to be doing, too. So there's some cultural shifts that are going to take place for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think when you talk about that, we have to think differently. We have to be able to be kind of giving up a part of ourself, and I mean that in a way that I deal with this all the time in change management initiatives with digital transformation projects that I work on, and it's the same thing that people have their job. What they do are becomes a massive mind shift that they have to do, and it's hard for a lot of people. I think for me in a way, I think that everybody struggles with that because we have a society and culture that's built on, what's the first thing you ask when you meet somebody? Hey, what's your name? What do you do? And we've got to get back. We've got to get away from what you do, and we've got to start getting back to who are you. And I think that it's funny. My kids, I have a 3 and a 7-year-old, almost 8, and instead of saying what's their name, they'll say who's their name, and I always have to correct them. No, no, no. It's what is their name. And I keep on thinking to myself, that's really interesting because they want to know who they are. They know what they are. They're a person, right? that relation, they don't know who they are, and that's what they're trying to get to. They're trying to find out, well, who is this person? Who's this person related to me? Who's this person? Like, adults, what do you do? And it puts us in a place that we have to focus on what we actually do and not who we are. So I think that's, you're spot on with that. I think that I see that playing out in real time every day. So you've actually get a pretty extensive career working with different companies, ExxonMobil, to starting your own consultancy now with Rock NRG. What are your biggest lessons you've learned about driving digital transformation from both sides, large corporation and now as an external consultant?
Yeah, so it's there are so many opportunities for change, and I think we nailed it by just considering that everyone wants to change. Actually, everyone actually wants to get around some of the pain points that they are currently having. Uh, the OSDU, so this is the Open Subsurface Data Universe, the OSDU forum has been a great collaboration point for operators, and we've seen something that we really haven't seen before, which is all of their pains and complaints they're actually sharing broadly. And this is actually pretty incredible because I think we're all getting to the point where we're tired of some of these pain points. We want this change to happen, and we realize that we can't do it on our own, or it's actually better to do it together. And this is kind of the cool paradigm that we're in today is technology is better on the outside of ExxonMobil than it was on the inside. Now, historically, we can't say that. We developed new technologies at ExxonMobil, and we thought we were the ones that could do it all ourselves just fine. But now we're getting to a point where there's so many great technologies outside of the companies. Leveraging external is becoming critical. We have to leverage the technologies from the outside, and we have to be able to work with each other on the outside. It's not a competitive advantage anymore to hold these pains to ourselves. So yes, some of the greatest things that I've learned is the eagerness to actually collaborate and work together has been facilitating incredible innovations in the energy industry, and will continue as we actually work together. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you have any specifics? Because I'd love to kind of on that road for a minute, if you will. Taking it from kind of almost complaint. And maybe that's not a great word for use for that, but it's a way to kind of vent your concerns and vent the challenges you're having, and then going into collaboration. Which, hey, like, the reason why we laugh when someone tells a joke that's really funny is usually because it's true. um and you're like, oh wait, they actually are doing the same thing, or they're having the same problem that I'm having, or they've had the same experience that I've had, right? So that forces that collaboration to then become not just collaborative because you know something, but now because you can relate to something. And there's a relational piece that actually happens, right? When you hear that kind of information that sometimes can seem vulnerable, because you can have this idea, again, going back to the job as identity. You can say, well, if I say that I'm struggling here, then does that mean that I'm not valid? And when you can kind of get past that, you can have that different mindset to say, no, I'm going to voice this concern, I'm going to voice this challenge, I'm going to voice that at the end of the day, I am human, I'm not a machine, I'm going to have problems, and I need to be able to understand. But then you get collaboration, you get relational, a relational collaboration on top of that. Where does it go from there? You talked about innovation. How does it go from this kind of ideation, which I would say probably is a mature ideation at this point, because you're really just getting validation that yes, we all have the same problem, or yes, this is an issue. How do you go from that to something that's innovative that actually can be executed?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things to do in the discovery is to include the right people and get them involved in sharing their pain points, because sometimes one business unit has different pain points than the other, but sometimes they're actually in common. And what I discovered is that it was better to gather the folks from the business unit um, and bring them together to share their problems or their concerns and their challenges, and then we could actually come up with a holistic solution. And one of the major themes, if I could share a theme, is
Yeah.
basically optimizing the data supply chain. And when you think of historically the way that data has moved or been brought into a company and then moved into applications and different tools and then eventually into the space to make a decision, it's a pretty long chain. Um, and so this data supply chain is actually pretty critical to the business, but it's been neglected because the ivory towers or the silos in each of the functions have have operated very efficiently and effectively, but the handoffs between them are pretty horrendous. And so you get this many opportunities are falling within the space. One of the specific ones that we already shared publicly was the 4D seismic to simulation. It was, we got seismic off the boats. We have to get it
Yeah.
processed. We've got to get it from the processors or the processing into the interpreter's hands. And then from the interpreter's hands, you got to get to the model builders and then to the reservoir engineers. And sometimes that whole sequence could take up to 2 years. When we're going to get this data in every week, we can't take 2 years. We've got to be able to get through that supply chain faster. So having a centralized place that we could have the data delivered. So this isn't like an Amazon delivery where you get data at the doorstep. I mean, that may help the supply chain a little bit, but we actually want people to go into our library or into our cupboard and put the data where it goes in the organization. And today that's in the cloud. So it's like, how do I get my data providers to be able to place our data properly in the cloud with the right format so that our consumers can instantly access and consume that data? Those standards are critical for the business and critical for the digital transformation.
Oh, that's great. I love the now off. I think of like a relay race, and it's always funny because when you're watching the relay and how fast they're going, and then you're like, oh man, they're ahead, and then it comes to the handoff, and if that handoff is just not perfect, much time, and then now they're having to look back, and they a good handoff allows both people to keep their head forward and to keep looking ahead. And I think that's a really, really interesting analogy around is sometimes we get to a point where we actually force people to look backwards, and that's not actually helping us.
Yeah, so I want to kind of carry that analogy a little bit further by saying
Oh,
our
sure.
current workflows in the energy industry, you have the relay racer and he's running around, he's got his baton, and instead of giving it to the guy, he's actually chucking it. He's throwing it like over there, and the guy has to like run a whole different course to grab it, and then he has to come back and start. So there's so much improvement that can be made because everyone's chucking their batons everywhere, and then they have to find out which one's theirs. I mean, it's really quite. If we had a video of that's basically how this data supply chain is working
Oh my
today.
god.
So there's lots of improvements to make.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. That's amazing. Now you're going to inspire me to go make a AI video of exactly that, because that would be amazing. Well, Ryan, it's always a pleasure to talking with you. I'm looking forward to doing this again. And man, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, definitely. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the time.